place is joyful gathering.
Right.
So we're filled with joy. So we are partying.
Yes.
So the theme for this month is prove it, live, love, laugh abundantly.
Yeah.
So the whole theme, except for next week when Martha Creek will be giving her message, will be about proving these spiritual principles that we talk about all of the time. So exactly what does that mean? Well, in Science of Mind, New Thought, our faith and our philosophy, then, we find these spiritual principles. We read them, we teach them, and how do we do just that? Well, we do it because we refer to a book. Our teachings are ancient teachings, but we use a book that we used in foundation class, which is, is coming up on Tuesday. It's the Science of Mind textbook, and it is Ernest Holmes' great book on how to use the spiritual principles. It is it's our training manual, if you will. It really is. And it's a training manual for what? For living abundantly. That's in all aspects of our lives. Loving abundantly in all ways, and having abundant joy throughout our experiences. Anybody want to have all of that abundance?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. The lessons are all there in that book. They're all in that book. And at the very end of his book, Ernest Holmes writes, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principles than to have him repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. To hold one's thoughts steadfastly to the constructive, not to that which endures, and to the truth. And this may not be easy in a rapidly, this is Holmes, a rapidly changing world. And he wrote this in the 20s. Rapidly changing world, wow, didn't know it's going to times that, times what, maybe 1,000 or so? But to one who makes the attempt, he writes, much is guaranteed. So it's our mission. If you choose to make it your mission this month, to take a serious look and prove what is taught in that book and in our teachings, and what all these messages are based upon. But actually, I want to go a little further than that, than an attempt. In words of, so it's much more than just an attempt, right? In the words of the great philosopher, Yoda, there is no try, there is only do. There is no try, there is only do. That's why when we catch ourselves with that, oh, I'm trying to do this, that word feels like it fits in there, but it really is holding us back, that try. So I don't want us to attempt to prove. I want us to prove so that we can live, we can love, and we can laugh like we've been doing here this morning abundantly. And we're going to do that by exploring this month, by exploring and experiencing one foundational principle. So the whole month is going to be based on this one principle that we'll get into. Before we talk about that one foundational principle that we will work on all month, I want to lay some groundwork by speaking briefly of the 4 stages of spiritual development. You might have heard these before. I'm just going to go over them really briefly. Some of you have heard these, and for others, they're brand new. So just take them in. And to balance that, we won't delve into them. We're just going to go over them briefly. So the first stage, maybe you've heard of this, by me. That's the mortal part. By me, and that's the victim. That's when we're in that victim blame consciousness. Me. Because we all, by the way, we all go in and out of all 4 of these stages. By me is the second stage. That's the metaphysician. That's a vital stage to growth, but it's not the end. Learning to be a co-creator. That's what this stage is. Learning to be a co-creator, taking responsibility. This is when we move into that stage of taking responsibility for ourselves. This is the place where we do our getting, our manifesting from. It's important. It's an important step. And then we have the third, which is through me. And this is mystic step. Focus is more on knowing God than manifesting anything in particular. Dwelling in the presence. This is where surrender is. Surrender. Setting the ego aside so that God can express through us. Through us. That's the third stage. The fourth stage is as me. And that's the master stage. You might get a glimpse of that in, some very deep moments in our lives. That's the combination of me, the metaphysician, and through me, the mystic. And that's when our connection with God is so strong that our manifesting is instantaneous. This is how Jesus Christ, this is how he manifested instantly. Spoke the word and it was done. So that's the fourth stage. So we go in and out of basically, I think, the first two and three, and once in a while we get into the fourth. So those are the four stages of spiritual development. The spiritual principle that we're going to explore this month helps us move. This is what helps us get. See, these principles that we have, that we use, that are infallible, will help us move into these higher stages and keep us there longer. That's why it's important to prove it. Not just to read it, but to prove it. When practiced, these principles can cause more fully and more completely, can cause us to move into our God consciousness. When we recognize that all is good, all is God, that it's not just the circumstance that have to dictate how I'm going to feel. Even though it's challenging, it's worth doing. And we're going to figure out the spiritual principle by listening to what some of the great religions of the world, just real quick, what each one of them have said. Christianity says there are three things that last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. You've heard of Corinthians? Use that in my wedding. In Judaism, charity is a prescription to build a better world. And Jewish children are brought up to do mitzvahs, which are good deeds for others. In Buddhism, one of the 7 treasures one must cultivate to move towards nirvana is generosity. The Quran urges Muslims to help others and to give to people in need. As Prophet Muhammad said, a person's true wealth is the good he or she does in the world. In Hinduism, generosity is perceived as a pathway to salvation. And in religious science, which we're going to include as one of the major religions because it's mine. So, give them a talk. All right. So Ernest Holmes, okay, slow it up, yeah. So Ernest Holmes wrote this about this, what we're talking about here. And underlying all of these very short synopsises of religions, there's a spirituality. So life is an internal givingness, the offering of the cosmic self to the joy of its own fulfillment. You and I are part of this joy. This is Holmes. And we find fulfillment only as this joy passes through us to others. Everything moves in circles. We short-circuit our own good when we refuse to pass it on. And so the spiritual principle then, that we are going to work with this month to prove that we can live, love, and laugh abundantly is a spiritual principle of giving, of being a giver, a real giver, rather than being a getter. By being, I have the book too, it's in my box, a go-giver instead of a go-getter. So that was the title of the talk today, being a go-giver rather than a go-getter. As we think about the 4 stages I just went over, spiritual unfoldment, certainly in the why me, mortal stage, and even in the by me, metaphysician stage of life, we are go-getters. We're getting. It's about us, getting. Reaching, sometimes grabbing for our good, right? You ever feel that we're grabbing for our good? In fact, there's a Sufi story that I really like, and it speaks of this orientation, and it is of a man that is drowning. And the people shout at the man, "Give us your hand. Give us your hand so that we can save you." But the man was hesitant and afraid, and he wouldn't do it. Finally, someone yelled, "Here, here, take my hand." And the man took it, because the man was so much more in tune with the taking than the giving. The taking, take my hand. With the taking, he almost lost his life in the water because he was so in tune with the getting part. The truth is that most of us are tuned in to the same radio station, if you will, the same frequency. And it's not even in your iPod or on a radio station. It's hardwired in our heads, in our thinking. And it's the WIIFM. We all know what that means, right? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? I'll give what's in it for me. This month, it's a brand new month, almost a brand new season, so that's cool. This month we're going to change that station and prove the value of changing that station using a delightful parable by, and it's in the book that I have, by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And the name of that book is The Go-Giver. And we're going to have some for the table next week. This little book sets forth 5 big laws of stratospheric success based on the foundational principle of being a giver to life. So today we begin to unwrap this foundational principle. And then in 2 weeks, we'll begin to really dig deep into exactly how this law works. So I suspect what might be going on through some of our minds right now is I'm being really challenged right now. Financially, energetically, emotionally. Don't talk to me about giving, right? I've got nothing else to give. Well, it's the 12-step programs prove it so beautifully. I've been told if you're in a place of unrest and just not clear and desperation even, go give to someone. Give to someone. So right now, if you're being challenged in any of these ways, seriously, once I read this by Emma Curtis Hopkins, and it stayed with me because it's so beautiful. She's the mother of New Thought, and the teacher, known as the teacher of teachers. Those of us who have taken the workshop we had last year and Roots class would know this. She once said that it wasn't enough to personally know and practice spiritual principles for abundant living. But once we know them, it is our responsibility to teach them. So this month, I'm assuming that responsibility. So we're going to teach these different aspects of abundant living by teaching how to give. So the spiritual fact is that when you give, and there's really not that much to teach. You start teaching the little ones to give, to share. It's to give. So when you are hurt, when you're in hardship, like I said, when you create that energy that helps you through your hard times. Let me say that again. So the spiritual fact is that when you give, all right, when you give, when you are hurt, or when you are in hardship, you create that energy. That can help you through your hard times, so you give. So once you give, you get out of that frequency of being in the problem, of being in that whole challenge that you might be going through. It takes you out of it and raises your vibration. From Science of Mind magazine, we can't free ourselves from being upset by staying in the vibration of being upset. Nothing changes if nothing changes. As we turn our attention to helping someone else in need of our love and assistance, we find that we are no longer in the vibration of upset. In fact, we have gone from being upset to being the vessel to uplift someone else. As a result, we are uplifted as well.
Yes.
That's what happens when we give. We are uplifted as well. Find a way to be of service. Find a way to be of service. And as you do, you will find that you go from being upset to being uplifted. Being upset to being uplifted. So if you find yourself unhappy, try making someone else happy and see what happens. If you feel empty and unfulfilled, then try doing something that is meaningful and worthwhile and see how you feel after that. Sometimes you got to work with yourself. In fact, most of the time. You're going to do it anyway. I have loud conversations with myself. I mean, they're out loud. All right, Margaret. Yeah, use your name. That's the name that, you were given when you were born. So there's no shortage of people and places to whom you can give, right? You can give to yourself, to your spouse, to your partner, to your children, your siblings, other family members, friends, your co-workers. It goes on and on. Strangers on the street. They're not really strangers. We just feel that we don't know them. Your community, your spiritual community. So many places to give. The planet itself, just loving this planet. So what can you give? What can you give? Of course, the first thing we think of is money, and that's good. Think of money. Money's fine. But it's not all. It's not the only thing. And I love this passage in the scripture from Acts 3, verses 2 to 8. And this is where Peter and John walk past the man on the street that's begging for alms at the gate of the temple, and the scripture reads, "So the man gave them his attention, expecting to get something from them. Then Peter said, 'Silver or gold I do not have, but what I have I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk.' And taking him by the right hand, Peter helped him up. And instantly the man's feet and ankles became strong. And he leaped up, stood and walked, and entered with them into the temple, walking and leaping and praising God." So here's a part of the partial list of what you can give besides money. You can give a smile. You can give a prayer. You can give a good thought. You can give a blessing, wise counsel, knowledge, information, a referral. You can give your love, your talents, your time, your attention, your forgiveness. Whoa. Hope, encouragement, assistance, leadership. There's so much that we can give. What did I miss? I missed a couple. But one that I did miss was touch. And I have a little story that goes with touch. It's a story, and you might have heard this. It's the story of the newborn twins, one of whom was critically ill, and they were both in the separate incubators as per the hospital rules. A nurse on the floor repeatedly suggested that these twins be kept together in the same incubator. The doctors finally agreed to try this. And when the twins were brought together in contact with each other, the healthy twin immediately put his arm around his sick brother. This instinctive exchange gradually helped the sick twin to recover and gain his health. That is a beautiful story of touch and how powerful it is. The baby's families and the doctor witnessed the intangible force of love, the incredible healing power of touch. And finally this morning, it is not only to whom and to what you give that matters, but how you give. How you give. You give with your heart, give with respect, and above all, give unconditionally, which means you don't expect anything back in return. And I know this has been brought up in many of our classes because a lot of disappointment comes from that expectation. Absolutely. The paradox is, and we all love paradoxes, right?
Right.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. The paradox is that when you give expecting a reward, you won't receive one. Because as soon as you focus on getting, you put the brakes on receiving. But when you give with joy, selfless and love, you benefit greatly. So when you just give without any expectation, that's when you really receive. You receive. And so, my friends, as our spiritual principle for this month is, we know it's giving, and the more you are in the flow of giving, the more you are in the flow of living. And I like that. Let's say that. Let me say it one more time. The more I'm in the flow of living, the more I'm in the flow of living. Did I say that right? Okay. First we're going to give, then we're going to live. Okay? So I'll say it again. The more you are in the flow of giving, the more you're in the flow of living. It rhymes. But it's good. Isn't that good? Yeah. So remember that our charge, and our change this month is to prove this principle, to prove it, not just give it up in lip service, because it's real easy to talk about it, but to actually prove it. But to prove it, we have to practice it. So every week, we're going to have an assignment, if you choose. So it's been said that great opportunities to help others seldom come, these great big ones, but there are so many small opportunities always around us to help others daily, minute by minute. And how many of you remember the book, or it was a movie too, Pay It Forward?
Yes.
The 7th grade student came up with that idea, that an opportunity to change the world. This was her idea. One person performs 3 acts of kindness and then instructs those for whom he does the act of kindness to pay it forward to 3 more people. It's kind of like the ice bucket challenge that we're seeing on all over Facebook. But still, there's a lot of giving involved in that. There's fun and giving. So it's all about that. It's about giving. So your mission is to begin, and just be cognizant of it, moving with that principle of giving then into the mystical master levels of consciousness, where life, love, and the laughter that we've been talking about are abundantly experienced. So this week, let's just make that decision to pay it forward, to give. Three times a day, at least.
You want to pass the basket now?
Very good, Nancy. I didn't time that, but yeah, so it is.